Anthony's lie can no longer stand. What does Caylee Anthony do?
Hey everybody, welcome back. And in today's video, we're going to finally be talking about Caylee Anthony. So this case has been suggested a lot of times to me, and I can understand why. It's extremely scandalous in terms of true crime cases, the verdict, the trial, the defendant, and everyone else involved in this case. It was very, very interesting, and I wanted to share some of my opinions on it and go through the timeline of what actually transpired in this case. I also wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about pathological liars, because if you're unfamiliar with this case, the defendant, Caylee Anthony, was known for her pathological lies. And I'm not talking about like just a few lies here and there. She had a clear pattern throughout her life of lying, of covering things up, of denying things. And I thought that was really interesting. So we're going to start by talking about pathological lying, which is kind of one of the themes of this video. And I got this information on healthline.com. I'll link it below. But they define pathological lying, also known as mythomania, as the chronic behavior of compulsive or habitual lying. So unlike telling the occasional white lie to avoid hurting someone's feelings or getting in trouble, a pathological liar seems to lie for no apparent reason. This can make it frustrating or hard to know what to do if you believe you've met one. Though pathological lying has been recognised for more than a century, there's not yet a clear universal definition of the condition. Some of it may result from a mental condition such as ASPD, which we talk about on my channel, while others appear to have no medical reason for the behaviour at all. And when it comes to defining a pathological liar, it's someone who lies compulsively. And while there appears to be many possible causes for it, it's not entirely understood why someone would act like this. So sometimes the liar will tell lies to appear to be a hero or to gain acceptance or sympathy, basically to manipulate your perception of them, or to get out of, some sort of situation. And some evidence from 2007, which is linked in the article, suggests that issues affecting the central nervous system may predispose someone to pathological lying, which I thought was really interesting. And as you know, compulsive lying is also a trait of some personality disorders such as ASPD. Trauma or head injuries may also play a role in pathological lying, along with an abnormality in hormone cortisol ratio. So that is really fascinating that there's like a biological, basis to why somebody lies pathologically, or there could be. And a 2016 study of what happens in the brain when you lie found that more untruths a person tells, the easier and more frequent lying becomes, which we will see in this case today. And the results also indicated that self-interest seems to fuel dishonesty, so narcissism. So that's really interesting, and I think it was good to sort of talk about that briefly when it comes to discussing the subject of today's case, and you will figure out why when I go into a bit more detail and explain the ins and outs, which I'm going to do right now. So our story starts on August the 9th, 2005, when a little girl named Caylee Marie Anthony was born. Caylee arrived despite the repeated denials of her mother Caylee to her family members that she was even pregnant. And although she suggested possible partners, which we'll get into in a second, she actually never gave a sure answer as to who was the baby's father. It's interesting because Caylee actually talked to a psychiatrist during the trial, and she told him that she didn't know who the father of Caylee was, and that she became pregnant after passing out at a party when she was 18 years old. So apparently she said that she had 2 beers, possibly given another drug, woke up, passed out, didn't remember anything at age 18, and that's how she got pregnant. Nobody knows who Caylee's father is, but Caylee actually lives with her own parents, Caylee's grandparents, George and Cindy, in Orlando, Florida, For about 3 years before, after a huge family argument on Father's Day, Casey leaves with Caylee and rebuffs any efforts to reconcile in person. And it was only a month after that Cindy actually reported Caylee missing. It was actually because a family car had been impounded and George retrieved the car and was overwhelmed by the smell that remained even after a bag of trash was removed from the trunk. Cindy tracks down her daughter that day, and then over a string of 911 calls reports that Caylee had been missing for a month, demands Casey's arrest, and notes the vehicle's odour, saying it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car. So obviously Cindy knew something was up, but what happened on Father's Day? Like, was it an argument over Caylee's father that she just took off? And how could they have let her leave with Caylee, like, if they know what Casey is like? But hindsight's 2020. And it was in July the 16th, 2008 that Casey is actually arrested. So during the investigation, Casey led the investigators on wild goose chase, first to the uninhabited apartment of a nanny that had took Caylee, named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, Zani the nanny, who ran off with Caylee on June the 9th. And then she also went to Universal Studios, where she pretended to have a job there. But her lies didn't get her anywhere, because she was arrested and charged with child neglect, lying to investigators, and also interfering with a criminal investigation. And then by July the 22nd, Casey was actually declared a person of interest in the case. And that's because of the cadaver dog that zeroed in on the odour of human decomposition in the trunk and also in the Anthony's backyard. And there was also conflicting statements, like Cindy's admission that they had all seen Caylee after June the 9th, although Caylee said that Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez had ran off with her at that day, which was complete and utter bull crap. And Casey was being held on minor charges at that point, just like lying to police and stuff. But because of her weird behaviour and the evidence, the judge set her bail for $500,000, and someone actually tried to pay that in order for Casey to lead them to Caylee. It was a man named Leonard Padilla, but Casey didn't want anything to do with him. She took the money and got out, but she didn't cooperate with him to find Caylee, because she knows what happened to Caylee. Caylee is not with Zani the nanny. On October the 14th, she was charged with first-degree murder. So I actually found out some information with a list of people who could have potentially been Caylee's father. And the first one was a man named Jesse Grund, who was Casey's former fiance. Shortly after Casey became pregnant with Caylee, she allegedly told her ex-fiance Jesse that he was the father. Jesse stated that he initially had doubts that he was the child's biological dad. Caylee was born in August and the two had only started dating in January. So when you do the math, it's pretty unlikely that Caylee was his child. Still, however, he claimed to have treated Caylee as his own daughter until a paternity test proved otherwise 6 weeks later. Jesse discussed his relationship with Casey with NBC's Matt Lauer, which he believed was initially strong but spiraled out of control when Casey started to lie about things, including stealing money from him and seeing someone else during their relationship. The second man that was mentioned was a man named Josh, who was Casey's alleged co-worker at Universal Studios. In 2011, CNN reported that Casey had a conversation with her close friend Milena Cabrese about the father's identity, and although Milena initially believed Jesse was the father, Casey actually told her that he wasn't. During the conversation, Casey told her friend that her daughter was born out of a one-night stand with a man named Josh. And according to Casey, Josh was really hot and had passed away in a car accident shortly after Caylee's second birthday. Casey, who claimed to have met Josh when they both worked at Universal Studios, later revealed that she had never actually worked there, complicating this story further. So my money is on it wasn't Josh, because I don't think Josh existed. And then the third person that it could have been is a man named Michael Patrick Duggan, who apparently died in a car crash in 2007. So this is the second person that could have been the father that apparently died in a car crash. And the fourth one is a man named Jesus Ortiz, and he formerly dated Caylee, and he also died in a 2007 car crash. So I'm just going to take a pause there. That's like 1, 2, 3 people that it could have been that died in a car crash. So another name that floated around was Eric Baker, who according to CNN died in a car crash. Caylee Anthony actually recounted a conversation she had with Caylee, who told her that Caylee's father was a man named Eric Baker. And according to Cindy, Caylee had a one-night stand with him, who was an old friend of hers who lived in a different state. Cindy also said she'd never met this man. So could this be the guy that she was talking about with the psychiatrist, the one-night stand at the party? Or could he just not have existed? Because the thing that's really interesting is that she gives a different name of who the father is to every single person who asks. And it's got to a point where it could be anyone who died in 2007 in a car crash that could have known her. So weird. And the last 2 suspects for who could have been the father are a little bit more controversial. So the first one was Lee Anthony, who was actually her brother. A former boyfriend of hers claimed that Casey's brother Lee had unsuccessfully made sexual advances towards her. And additionally, during the trial, Jesse, who was her former fiance, who we talked about, described one point in recent years that Caylee woke up one night with Lee standing up over her. And also recounted the time Caylee told him that her brother had groped her. So really disturbing. But his DNA was tested during the trial and the FBI ruled him out as Caylee's father. And the last one is the most controversial, and that's her own father, George Anthony. Caylee's grandfather could have also been her father. So all that, but yeah, he was rumoured to be her father, and it was allegations that he actually sexually abused Caylee were introduced in the opening arguments of the trial. Caylee's defence attorney, Jose Baez, claimed that Caylee's conflicting statements surrounding the circumstances of her daughter's death were a defence mechanism resulting from the years of sexual abuse she experienced from her father. And still, like Caylee's brother, her father George had his DNA tested by the FBI during the trial, and the test also excluded him as a possible father for Caylee. So the father for Caylee remains unknown. So forensic evidence was found in Caylee's car. There was a hair strand discovered in the trunk that was microscopically similar to those found in Caylee's brush, and also showed characteristics of decomposition. And also an air sample from the trunk was found to contain chemical compounds consistent with decomposition also. And then by December the 11th, 2008, the skeletal remains of a young girl were discovered, and then by December the 20th, they were confirmed to be Caylee. And the judge ruled that it was a homicide of undetermined means. So yeah, like even the judge knows it was a homicide, but it would be about proving how the homicide took place that would land a conviction, as we will find out. And also an interesting thing to note was that on January the 23rd, George Anthony, Cindy's father, attempted suicide. He was found despondent and possibly under the influence of medication and alcohol in Daytona Beach, Florida, in a hotel with a 5-page suicide note. And by April the 13th, it was announced that prosecutors were going to pursue the death penalty for Caylee because of sufficient aggravating circumstances. And by May the 24th, the trial started. So Caylee told some whoppers in her time. I actually have some of the lies that she told. I found them online, and goodness, like they were really crazy. So one of the first lies that we're going to talk about is that on the day that Caylee was reported missing, Casey told police that she spoke to her daughter and that her daughter said, "Hi, mommy," and told her a story about her shoes and a book she was reading. Casey told the police she was excited to talk to me, and at this point, Caylee was already dead. The second lie, one of the big lies, was that she said she had a job as an event planner at Universal Studios, and during the investigation she even led police to a building on the Universal lot and down a hallway until she finally turned to the police and said, "Actually, I don't even work here." So could you imagine being the police officers in this case? It would be like so annoying, like to have a witness or someone you're investigating that is like always lying. Another one was that the babysitter who apparently took Caylee was a former girlfriend of a man named Jeffrey Hopkins, and that this guy was also a boyfriend of hers in the past. She told her mother, Cindy, that Jeffrey had a toddler named Zachary, and she had a picture of a man and a boy on her phone that she said was Jeffrey Hopkins, filed under boyfriend. Weird. And when Jeffrey took the stand on the trial, he said that he did go to middle school with Casey, but that he has no child and never met anyone named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, who he was apparently the boyfriend of. Another lie was that Casey described how Zanny the nanny lived in one neighbourhood for several months and then moved to another location. And her story of the babysitter's move was complete with a description of the apartment's interior. So that's going back to what I said earlier about the elaborate details of people who are pathological liars, which is pretty interesting. She also claimed that her friend and co-worker at Universal Studios was someone named Juliette Lewis. And Casey and her mother Cindy went to help Juliette with a fundraiser, but after waiting for about 90 minutes when Juliette didn't show up, Cindy said that Universal Studios said they didn't even know anyone called Juliette Lewis. So just reading this is completely insane. You know, telling your mom that you need to go to a fundraiser for someone that doesn't exist. Like, that's beyond just lying. It's crazy. Another one was that she told her mother that the father of Caylee was a man named Eric Baker, and she later called her home to tell her mum that Eric had been killed in a car crash, and she told detectives that she had Eric's obituary to prove that Caylee's father was dead. But it was never confirmed that Eric was the father of Caylee, and it's still unclear who her father was. And another one was the man we discussed earlier, Jeffrey Hopkins, had a mother named Jules and that she had cancer. And Cindy actually even baked a cake for a Christmas season meeting with Jules and Jeffrey, but the meeting was cancelled at the last minute. So that makes us wonder to believe if he had a mother who had cancer, or would this another lie that Casey was telling? And they keep going on. Casey also told her mother that she was in Jacksonville and was going to stay longer to attend Jules' wedding, but she was actually staying at the home of her boyfriend Tony Lazaro and another friend's apartment in Orlando. And Casey told her mother at different times during the month that Caylee was missing. When Caylee was supposed to be missing, that she was actually at Disney World. Then another time she said, oh, she's just at SeaWorld. And then another time she was like, she's at Universal Studios. And during this whole time, Caylee was dead. She was famously known to have said, I don't know where she is. And that is the God's honest truth. On July the 16th, 2008. And in my opinion, that was the biggest lie she told of all. So the trial began in May the 24th, 2011, with the prosecution's argument being that Casey was a party girl with no use for her young daughter, which was backed up by the month spent shopping and drinking during Caylee's absence, and the weird tattoo, La Bella Vita, that she got after her daughter went missing, which is very strange. But that argument was actually eclipsed by Jose Baez's stunning opening statement, which claimed that Caylee drowned in the family swimming pool and that George sought to cover up the accidental death, also claiming that he had molested Casey throughout her life, which ignited the habit of lying to cover up the pain that she was going through, and that the man who found the body had actually planted Caylee's body in the woods to help cover up the whole debacle. George, however, denied that he molested his daughter or knew anything about Caylee's drowning once he took the stand as the first witness. Then another witness offered a theory about the smell in Casey's car. This person was a man named Simon Birch, and he testified that he encountered multiple vehicles with dead bodies during his 3 decades in the business, and that the smell from Casey's car was consistent with those past experiences. And also then Casey's brother took the stand, describing a very special bond that he observed between Caylee and her mother. Finally, a forensic expert took the stand, and this is where a bombshell sort of claim came in, that there was shockingly high amounts of chloroform, a chemical released by decomposition, as well as one that can be used to knock someone unconscious, detected in the car, which led to the conclusion that the dead body was indeed present. However, his testimony was contradicted the following day by an FBI scientist who compared the chloroform level in the trunk to the amount found in household cleaners. And then the whole search engine question came up. A software designer testified that someone had searched for chloroform 84 times and also looked up such terms as head injuries, ruptured spleen, chest trauma, internal bleeding on the Anthony's home computer in March 2008 during the regular work hours of George and Cindy. So hint, hint, who could it have been? And the designer later reported an error in his detecting software that determined that the user visited a site related to chloroform only once. So this was really confusing, for the jury, obviously. But why would someone be looking up chloroform? Well, Cindy took the stand and claimed that she was the one who researched chloroform, and that she also testified that a stain found in the trunk, which was allegedly caused by Caylee's decomposing body, was there when the family purchased the car 8 years earlier. So either she's telling the truth or she's trying to cover up for her daughter. And then on July the 3rd, the two sides presented their closing arguments. So continuing the narrative that Casey was overburdened by Caylee, the prosecutor empathised to the jury how the young mother was motivated enough to go to extremes to achieve her freedom. He said something needed to be sacrificed, and that something was either the life she wanted or the life thrust upon her, and she chose to sacrifice her child. But although he was forbidden to revisit the unsupported molestation claims, Jose nevertheless delivered an effective closing argument by pointing out the lack of evidence that could definitively place Caylee's body in the car trunk or tie Casey to her daughter's death. And then the bombshell came in. On July the 5th, 2011, Casey was found not guilty of murder. And on July the 17th, 2011, Casey was released from jail. There was 100 protesters that showed up to demand justice for Caylee. And her lawyer made a statement. "It is my hope that Caylee Anthony can receive the counselling and treatment she needs to move forward with the rest of her life." So, oh my goodness. It is so interesting because when you think about this case, you're almost sure that she's going to be found guilty, because who else would have did this to Caylee? But I remember watching an interview with one of the members of the jury during, I think it was an Oprah interview or something, and they said that they just couldn't have the definitive evidence that planted Casey to the murder. So she ended up being acquitted, which is crazy. I just wish that Caylee somehow found her justice, whatever that was. with someone like Caylee Anthony involved in this case who literally can't tell the truth at all, I guess we'll never know. And even in an interview she did years later, she said she still doesn't know what happened to Caylee, which I would bet all my money on is another lie. So yeah, what a crazy case. So it was a really interesting case to dig into, and I think that Caylee is an interesting case in regards to like forensic psychology. And I guess the sad part is we'll never truly know what happened to Caylee, and she'll never get her justice, which is very, very sad. And I know Caylee has been doing interviews and apparently she's going to write a book and everything. And I wouldn't believe a word of that book, whatever she says. How many of you guys believe what Jose Baez said about what happened? And I would love to hear what you think happened as well. So leave comments below. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video talking about Pathological Liars and Caylee Anthony. And I'll be back again soon. Bye.